Hey, everybody, and welcome to Common Good Conversations, a podcast creating deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics for the common good in West Michigan. I'm Nick Brock, and joining me is Shawn Skinner.
Good morning, Nick. How are we doing today?
I am great this morning. It's a beautiful, sunny morning, the 13th of July, and just, a few weeks after
You're very
the
observant
4th.
on the date.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's right at the bottom right of my computer screen. So very accurate. It is 9:57 a.m. of 2024.
How was your 4th of July so far?
Well, that's a great conversation because we did 4th of July together, right?
So that doesn't mean it was good, though.
It was great. So, listener, check this out. My wife and I, we've hosted the 4th of July in our backyard for the past couple of years. So I live in the city of Granville, and they have this big fireworks celebration, and the fireworks go off just a few blocks from our house. So we invite all of our family and friends over for barbecue, happy hour drinks, and then just hanging out. So we've got like 10 kids, running around the backyard, ages like 8 to 10. They're jumping on the trampoline. They're swimming in the little pool. They're trying not to, torch themselves with fireworks. And it is a great time. Yeah. And Shawn, you and your family, of course, are there with us as well.
Yes, we were. And we had a blast. Maybe more fun than the fireworks that we saw the next night down at Gun Lake.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, well, they did a private fireworks show because the Gun Lake fireworks were on Saturday. Your fireworks were on Thursday. So we went down there on Friday and spent the day on the lake and watched the community fireworks of a bunch of residents that live on the lake that pitched in to buy fireworks. So they could all watch their own fireworks without having the everybody and their mother come out there on Saturday with their boats and busy up the lake.
Mm-hmm.
But after the fireworks are done, the battery was dead on the boat. So at about midnight, I'm out there with the whole family and my buddy Aaron and his kid and his wife and flagging down boats in the dark. Hey, can you tow us back to our dock, please?
That sounds like you trying to flag people down in the dark. Sounds like you don't have a proper emergency kit. I imagine that according to state guidelines or something, you need maybe some flashlights or some type of kit. Are you, kind of flying under the radar with that?
Oh, no. You need a tip on a small inland lake. Your rules are pretty minimal. You need to have a life jacket per body on the boat. You need to have your registration. You need to have a whistle or air horn or horn if you need to get anybody's attention. But that's pretty much about it on in a fire extinguisher. That's about all you need on a pontoon boat on an inland lake.
Okay.
But, every single one of us on the boat has phones, and every single phone has a flashlight on it.
Right.
So,
yeah, you have what you need there. So then you were able to get a tow to land ho.
Yep. So it just feels like it's been a season of replacing batteries. I've already replaced 2 batteries in 2 other boats, one of my forklift at the shop. My buddy Aaron replaced his battery in his boat, and my buddy Vance replaced the battery in his boat. So, they just don't make them like they used to, I guess.
No, they don't, because there's some new advanced technology. So they definitely don't make them like they used to. But sounds like you need to really solve your battery problem, you and your friends.
Yeah, our dilemmas.
Yeah, so that was 4th of July. When they do the fireworks, do they set them off from the middle of the lake, or is it like from somebody's house?
It's from the state park where there's and they get it all fenced off, so nobody's around it that doesn't need to be there, because you don't want to end up with, missing fingers, stuff like that.
Yeah. Keep all your limbs and what's the word here? Your extremities. That's a good thing to have.
But, so we had extremities. What kind of coffee are you drinking this morning?
I am drinking no coffee this morning, not during this podcast. I've already had 2 cups of coffee, some of my favorite coffee blend. But for this record, surprisingly, I'm not drinking anything. But, since it's summer and we're already talking about coffee, I'd love to share this little tidbit with our listeners. So, listener, check this out. We'd like to thank Shul Coffee Company for supporting the podcast. So that's, it's summer, and that means it's time to enjoy some fun in the sun, just like you did, Shawn, out in your boat, and just like we did in our backyard. So Shul Coffee wants you to fuel up before your summer adventures with the delicious flavors from Shul Coffee, roasted right here in Grand Rapids for over 40 years. Did you know for over 40 years, Shawn?
I did not.
You knew at least for 2 years. Shul Coffee has multiple summer flavors for you to choose from, like s'mores campfire cookie, banana split, star spangled berries, and Neapolitan. All are available in decaffeinated flavors as well. Visit Shul Coffee Company online at shulcoffee.com and use code RADIO for 20% off, or come into the store located on 29th Street. Discount only available online.
Speaking of flavored coffees, have you tried that bacon
No.
coffee I got you? The maple bacon coffee for Christmas?
No, I haven't.
7 months ago?
No, but, since that's not in the lineup of Shul Coffee, I'm just going to get rid of that. Let me ask you, out of the lineup that I just mentioned here, s'mores campfire cookie, banana split, star spangled berries, and Neapolitan, which of those are you most likely to try?
Possibly the berries or the Neapolitan.
Okay. Yeah. I think, since we're talking about the 4th of July, which by the time we put this out will be a few weeks past, Star Spangled Berries would be an appropriate choice. Sounds like a real American flavor.
Yeah. Well, the s'more one wouldn't be too bad either if you're relating it there, because a lot of people are camping, making s'mores nowadays.
I like that too. That makes a lot of sense. So, listener, check out those things. And check this out too. We'd also like to thank Rethink Nutrition for supporting the podcast. Rethink Nutrition is a meal replacement bar made from only the good stuff sourced locally, like stone ground sprouted oats, natural peanut butter, organic blueberries, pecans, wildflower, honey, cherries, apricots, and pea protein powder. Shawn, you need to try their delicious offerings of apricot crunch, cherry mint, or blueberry bliss to boost your mind and body naturally. Now, here's a fun fact with this little organization. You could also donate a bar to people in crisis situations who require urgent assistance. So right now, that's the people of the Ukraine, where they'll be handed out as part of meal kits to orphanages and to families living along the front lines of war. Visit rethinknutrition.org and use code GOOD to get your first order 25% off.
Look at us making the big time with sponsors.
Hey, we're making some big time moves here. And listener, if you have a business that you'd like to have support the podcast, you can do that by sending an inquiry to votecommongood.wm@gmail.com. And instead of me just saying words like this, I can say words that promote your business. I think that's a pretty good deal. What do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, and you like to speak words, so I mean, might as well, get some sponsorships out of it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. This podcast without words would really suck. It'd really be boring. So because this is going to be all, as our listeners know, this is just an audio medium. So words
radio
are
sounds
crucial.
terrible through Braille. So
through Braille. Yeah. I don't know what you would call that. That's going back old school. Shawn, listener, check this out. Today, we have the privilege of being in conversation with Dr. Paul Isely. Dr. Paul Isely is the Associate Dean and Professor of Economics for the Seidman College of Business at Grand Valley State University and has become somewhat of an economics guru in West Michigan because for nearly a decade, West Michigan employers have used his historically accurate economic findings to help guide their business decisions. He's been interviewed extensively by TV, radio, and newspapers on the West Michigan economy and its relationship to the national and state economies. Paul, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. Paul, before we dive into the hard-hitting things that this program likes to take care of, we like to, get to know our guest a little bit. So as I was doing my research on the internet, as doing the Google research, the internet was telling me that your foray into economics began during your high school years in the marching band, and had to deal with the high school football at the time. You want to share that little story?
Sure. As I was going through high school, I was in marching band, and we practiced in the morning just like the football team. Because of the schedules, the football team would get done sooner than the marching band. And they would get into the building, and we'd all be there before school started. So they would grab every newspaper that had a sports section. So if you remember in the old days, you had bamboo sticks with the old newspapers on them.
Forgot about those.
And so by the time I got there, the only newspaper left was the Wall Street Journal. So I read the Wall Street Journal through high school. And so when I got to college, economics was really easy for me, even though I was going on in physics at the time. And in the end, it ended up being what I continued doing.
That's interesting. Yeah, the Wall Street Journal does not have a sports section, so.
I totally forgot about those kendo sticks that held held those papers back in school.
Yeah, now you've told my age, too.
Yeah. We're talking about some real old school technology. I mean, when I was growing up too, we would get the local press. It was the Grand Rapids Press at that time. It would come in on Saturdays and Sundays, at least in our house. And I'd sit down with my dad, have a cup of coffee in the morning, and just, have the newspaper up in front of you and just kind of read it, open from page to page. And then you learn how to, fold it over. And you learn, okay, if I smudge the ink too much, I'm going to get it on my thumbs, and then get it all over the fridge and the counter. So, all those fun things about newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
What instrument did you play when you were in the marching band?
Interesting enough, I was probably the smallest man in the band, and they had me play bass drum. So it was quite a sight to see this little kid wandering around with this big, huge bass drum. But I've been a drummer my entire life. So
nice.
Okay, fascinating. I've played the drums too. Can you play the whole kit, the drum set?
Yep, I have a kit at home, and did some garage bands through college. So.
Oh,
nice.
Shawn, this is your avenue. Go ahead.
I still actively do the garage band thing, except for I play bass and guitar.
Well, a good rhythm section is a good rhythm section.
There you go. You got to know where your place is. Can't do nothing if you can't keep tempo.
That's right.
Nice. Well, that's fun, little interesting facts into our larger conversation of the economy here. But Paul, I would love for you to have us to set up like how we got here. So right now, as I stated at the top of the program, it's July 13 of 2024. And I wonder if you could give us a brief overview of how we got here, meaning, talking about, with inflation and, gas prices, et cetera. What's your take on how we got here over the previous 3 to 4 years?
Sure. We can blame where we're at today on COVID, just like everything else. And we can see that during the course of COVID, people received lots of subsidies. and they couldn't spend them because they were trapped at home on their couch or couldn't move around or couldn't spend the money that they were receiving. So what we saw during 2020 and 2021 is a huge increase in the amount of money that people had. And so as we got into 22, 23, and people could do things again, they chose to spend that money, and they spent it really, really fast. All right. So even though we were sort of expecting that might lead us to a recession at the end of last year, they had even more money than we thought they did. And they kept spending it this year. And as they spent it, they finally ran out of that COVID money, and they had to start borrowing money. And now they've reached a point where they've borrowed money beyond what's really sustainable. And so now they're taking on second jobs and third jobs to try and keep their spending going. And now it's starting to collapse, and the amount of spending people can do is going down. So that really fast spending drove up inflation. And as we've come out of that really fast spending and people are slowing down, now we're getting news that inflation is slowing down. And so the majority of the inflation after 2020 was because of these demand side shocks, demand because of people's extra wealth that they had at home.
So they've gone into debt now, just trying to keep up with their lifestyle that they got accustomed to with having the extra money.
Yeah, and we've seen this particularly for young people. And by young people, I mean under the age of 40. So you're old if you're over 40. So
I've only been 40 for 7 months. And now
all of us here are
now
old.
You're old. So what we've seen is that young people, as they went through this process, they didn't own a house. So then they had to pay higher and higher rents or buy houses that cost more and more money. They didn't have a car, so they had to buy cars at elevated prices. And so their situation is much, much weaker. And so we're seeing them get behind on their loans, like car loans, at a rate we haven't seen since the 2007, 8, 9 recession.
That was going to be my next question, how it references back to what was going on then with the housing crisis.
Right. But the older people, the 40-somethings and older, they're doing just fine. So we're seeing that that group is getting behind just like normal. So we've seen this dichotomy between the two edges. And what started to happen this summer is as that consumption started to pull back, we started to see the job market slow down. All right. We saw AI kick up. So we saw that as a result, people in their 50s starting to be laid off. And we saw them not being able to find jobs after that. All right. So they're staying unemployed longer. So that's now the second shoe that's starting to slow things down, because now that group that's been really strong up until this summer is starting to get weaker.
Paul, I wonder if we could go back to the COVID here. So at the top, you stated like all this has to do with COVID, right? And we all know what happened with COVID. But then, so coming out of COVID, out of that, I heard where you spoke on a different podcast, like that recession period was only like 2 months, right? Was that correct? So that small window really affected the economy. So then coming out of that, something had to be done. And what I've often heard, and I think is accurate, but you can speak more to this, is that coming out of that, the economy through the current administration decided to run the economy hot. Would that be accurate? Like, so I guess the question is that accurate? And then was it like too hot? Should there be a middle hot or like a just right Goldilocks hot? Like, what is that?
Well, there's a just right Goldilocks hot, but it's almost impossible for government to dial in that number. So remember, the economy is like a pendulum. It swings back and forth. And if we pull it really hard in one direction, then it starts swinging really fast. And what happened in those first 2 months of COVID is in April of 2020, 15% of the people who had jobs in March didn't have jobs in April. Okay. And here in Michigan, that number was double that. So Michigan had one of the harshest economic shutdowns in the entire nation. In fact, the harshest. So that resulted in a lot of that economy being pulled really hard. And so when it came back, it swung really far in the opposite direction and went really, really fast. So it went right past fast to super fast to speedy to, if this was a Spaceballs movie, plaid. So
I like that. It's a nice reference.
And because it was so fast, that really drove up that inflation as we went through 2023.
What made it the harshest for us here in Michigan? Was it regulations or just Michigan in general?
So what we saw during COVID is that the two states that are outliers in how hard they shut down the economy was New York and Michigan. And they're outliers because COVID entered the United States through those two locations. So we all know the stories in New York City where they were stacking up bodies. And we were starting to see that in Detroit. And so the reaction with as little knowledge as we had at the time was we have to do something very hard to keep this from getting really bad. So I'm not going to judge whether that was a good idea or a bad idea because that's hindsight and everything else. But that's why the reaction happened that way. So if you think about it, there was only 5 states in the United States that required construction, outside construction, to shut down. And Michigan was one of them.
With COVID coming out and the Biden administration deciding to run the economy hot, what other factors would you include, or what variables would you include that have led to inflation, the high inflation rates, the high mortgage rates, etc.? What other variables would you lump into that?
Well, and we have to remember that the government has very limited control on the economy. So in general, in the past, we haven't seen a lot of difference in the growth rates that you achieve under either type of administration. Now that's starting to be different now because they're getting further and further apart in their ideas. But what we had was consumers, and consumers spent well past what they're capable of spending in a standard time frame. All right. In some ways it's been called revenge spending. So I gave up 2 years of my life because of COVID, not being able to do any of the things I wanted to do. I'm going to do them all now. And we saw that happen. That was facilitated to some extent by the amount of government money that came out during COVID. And we now know, we needed to do something or it would have been very bad. But we now know that the amount that we did was more than what was necessary. And so it allowed us to come out hotter. Mm-hmm. You throw in the Ukraine, and now you're bouncing stuff around even more. But where we're at right now is at a state level, we're generating lots and lots of tax revenue, and we're keeping up with our spending. At the national level, we're not seeing that. So we're getting at times over the last few years, 1 out of every $2 or $3 the government spends, they had to borrow. And that's not sustainable either.
That's nationwide, or is that okay? So what are we doing in Michigan that's making it so it's more sustainable for us opposed to nationally?
I mean, the short answer is that we have lots of revenue. So housing values have continued to go up. Unlike on the coasts where we saw drops in housing values in Michigan weren't overvalued like that. And in fact, across the entire Midwest, they weren't overvalued like that. So housing values have still gone up. That increases tax revenue on property. People's incomes have been going up faster than inflation. Incomes are going up, increases income tax revenue. And the revenge spending, so sales tax revenue is just wonderful. Mm-hmm. And so if you look at that combination of things, we came out of that just with lots of revenue that they didn't expect. So as we were going through COVID, they expected revenue to cut back, and they were wrong.
Yep.
Revenue actually accelerated. And so it gave them a pile of money to be able to spend without putting the economy in, or putting the government in as much of a problem as what we're seeing at the federal level.
You had mentioned property taxes in that. Someone had told me recently that they were talking about possibly cutting property taxes. And
they might. I mean, they might cut different millages, but I'm not seeing property taxes in and of themselves are going up because the value of the house is going up, not because we're increasing the tax rate.
Yeah.
So we're not seeing lots of movement to increase that tax rate, and we are seeing some movement to decrease it because of those increases that we've seen.
Gotcha.
Paul, you said something earlier too, where a government has limited control of the economy because of all of these variables that you mentioned, and I think this is something that people might not understand, right? When politicians start politicking and news media grabs onto these things, I think the general idea that people take away is that a particular administration is going to pull the lever for the plans of how they want the economy to go, and it's just going to go. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit to that, because and I'll frame this up one other way too. So like on social media, I've often seen as an administration leaves office, that person will take like a picture of the local gas station where the prices are, like $3.20, and then they'll take another picture after another administration leaves. So that's like kind of the, hey, look, this administration did good or did great. Could you just help us understand how that works or doesn't work for whatever president and administration?
Sure. Think about it this way. Government spends about 20 cents out of every dollar that is spent in the United States. Consumers and businesses spend about 80 cents out of every dollar. All right. Who's got the bigger control over the economy? Somebody who's spending 20 cents or somebody who's spending 80 cents? All right. The consumer has a lot to say about where things are going. On top of that, the economy has a rhythm to it. Okay, just like a pendulum. Okay, if you knew nothing else and just wanted to use a rule of thumb, you would say that we have a recession roughly every 10 years. 1982, 1992, 2001, 2007-8 came a little early. 2019, it's a rhythm. It doesn't actually match up with any of those government agencies. Where the government can cause issues for us is if they change the game too fast. Okay. So if they come in and say, the last people knew absolutely nothing, we're changing everything. What that does is it creates a lot of uncertainty for people. And they're like, I don't know how that's going to affect me. And so what do? They pull back on their spending. All right. And that's what we worry about. And we're worried about that here at the end of the year because both sides are so impassioned about what is right and what was wrong that half the United States is going to be in mourning in the second half of November, and half of them are going to be jubilant. In fact, over the last two administrations, we've seen that during the Trump administration, that counties that were red grew faster, and it wasn't because the government put money in there. It's because the people there were more optimistic about what was happening. We've seen over the last 4 years, counties that are blue have grown faster. And it's because the people in those counties have decided to spend their money faster and are more optimistic about what's going on. So it's we often blame the politicians, but it's often our own fault.
That's so fascinating, that the way that you put that, with the government spending 20 cents out of the dollar and consumers 80 cents. It's a real good way to understand it. So, hey, consumer, I don't know, take
You have
take
more
heed
power
from
than you
Paul.
think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We do affect the economy through our choices, whether we are happy or sad, or we're going through revenge spending. Which I wanted to ask Shawn, when did you do any revenge spending during that time frame?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I don't know. He was talking about how everybody's gotten so much money through the COVID stuff and everything. And I don't remember signing up or getting too many things on packages. I was fortunate enough where the wife was able to work from home, and I worked by myself 90% of the time, especially at that time. So I was I was really one of those ones that people would have gotten mad at, like, well, you're supposed to stay home. No, I'm going to go to my shop and work. I have work there. I'm not going to close down my shop. If I need to, I'll set the jobs outside the door so customers can pick them up so we can keep separation. But I'm not going to go to work because they say don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of like when they're like, well, you can't go boating. What do you mean I can't go boating? I'll be outside. I'm not around anybody on a boat, you know?
So you're saying that you didn't buy a 54-inch, HD K plus TV from wherever?
Not out of revenge.
Not out of revenge. Yeah, I'm trying to recall if we did anything, and I'm sure we did. And I know that Christina, she would go, "Oh yeah, when we
you
got
bought
that
a house, you bought a house."
that was we bought it before all this. We just got into this
that's
house
right.
before
You did
the world
just
almost
before.
ended. Paul, did you do any revenge spending?
Oh, there was pent up travel that we had to do. So we spent some time traveling, and that's what a lot of people have done. I mean, my social media feeds are filled with people in Europe right now, and it's like, wow, did everybody go to Europe this year? It's like, well, they couldn't go, and so now they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen lots of people traveling and going places beyond what they would normally be able to spend.
Have you traveled to Europe before?
Oh, I haven't. I've been to Europe twice, and both times on business.
Oh, okay. Well, then that leads into my question there a little bit. Do you find it pretty interesting to be abroad and possibly talking to people about economy over there?
Yeah. Their view of what is the U.S. economy is completely skewed and often completely wrong.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well, I mean, U.S. people have a hard time understanding our economy.
Uh-huh.
If you're not even here, it becomes much harder. So remember, in Europe now, the government spends a much higher percentage of their wealth. Okay, so we see tax rates on the order of 50% in some of these countries. All right. So a lot of the spending happens from the government. So they see the government as far more powerful than what we see it here. And so they often believe that the president can flip a switch. And it doesn't happen that way.
Gotcha. I only asked because when my wife and I got married in 2016, we got married in November, so we went over to Italy for 2 weeks, right after Trump was elected, and there was a lot of interesting conversations at those wine tasting tables and everything that we did tourist wise. That I remember I drove a Ferrari for my birthday in Italy. I'm trying to think of the town that Ferraris. We did a tour of the Ferrari factory and stuff, and
I think it's Ferrariville.
Ferrariville. I want to say it's Milan or something like that. No, that's completely incorrect. But they wouldn't let you drive it by yourself. I had to drive it with somebody from the dealership and stuff in the car. And the second we got out of the lot, he leaned over to me and goes, "All right, let me tell you why I think Trump's a good idea and why Clinton shouldn't have won." And I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. And he started going off, and the Clintons had their time in office and this and that and that and this and Trump. And
so then you peeled out and just left him in the dust. Is that
no? He was
in
with
the
me.
Ferrari.
Get out of your car.
I'm taking this thing. I'm not talking about politics. I'm here to go fast.
Mhm.
All right, Paul. Let's take this conversation about the economy, and drop it down into West Michigan. So, as you do through Grand Valley State and with a colleague of yours, you put together a forecast, and then you share this with the community. So, just like your brief description from a news video that I said that or saw was that you said the economy is not bad but could be better. So share with us about what the economy looks like, or the forecast over the past year.
Yeah. So as we went into this year, we saw that as people ran out of that COVID money, they'd start spending less money, and that would lead to the economy slowing down. And it would probably start happening about mid-year, and it's about mid-year, and things are feeling noticeably slower. And that it would not affect all industries the same. So it's not going to be a broad-based thing like we had in 2007, 8, 9, 10. All right. So here in West Michigan, we were seeing employment growth slowing down into somewhere around the 1.5% range. We saw inflation this year slowing down into the high twos. We saw sales staying pretty constant, and we saw just overall optimism dropping for businesses and going up for government. So, which was only happened twice in the last 30 years on our survey. So that's where we were entering the year. We're halfway through the year, and where we're at right now is we're right on track for that employment growth that we talked about, that we expect that it's there. What's interesting is, though, that the distribution of that job growth in West Michigan has gotten wonky. So what's growing right now is education, construction, transportation, and leisure and hospitality. Okay. But we have manufacturing shrinking right now, employment-wise. So over the last year, manufacturing's lost almost 4,000 jobs. And healthcare and construction have each added basically 3,000 jobs here in West Michigan. So it's creating two different worlds right now. And some of that manufacturing stuff is around uncertainty. We've really increased our aerospace exposure in West Michigan. And if you've heard anything about Boeing, you know that probably they're not building as many planes right now.
Yeah, they're working on those doors.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of confusion within the manufacturing sector for automobiles as to what's going to take off and what's not going to take off. Because again, we can say do this, but the consumer decides what's going to happen. We can help incentivize them to do something, but the consumer is the one who drives the car. So, and they're choosing differently right now than they did last year at this time.
Yeah, Paul, I got
EVs getting bought.
Yeah, that's what I'd like. Is that when you refer to manufacturing in kind of the cars, is that people kind of figuring out, okay, do I want an electric vehicle or not? Because we're seeing like these Tesla charging stations at kind of some big hubs around here. So is that kind of where people are confusion and where maybe the manufacturing might be down?
Yeah, I think there's that. But there's also lots of weird things that happened over the last few years. Because we were all forced to drive our cars a little bit longer because during COVID, cars weren't made as much. There was fewer cars available. They seemed awfully expensive. We all learned that cars last longer than what we thought. Well, maybe we didn't all, but many people learned that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we have that difference between young people and old people I was talking about before. Young people buy completely different cars than old people. And so what mix of things you're going to have, and then how fast are EVs or alternative fuels of some kind going to roll out? Because that's going to affect how you invest in your company. And remember, along the lakeshore, from Holland up through Muskegon, 40% of the workers around there are in manufacturing. So people think about it as vacations and beaches and whatever, but it's 40% manufacturing in the United States, where employment is only between 10 and 15% manufacturing.
Oh, wow. Wow. Fascinating. So then go ahead, Shawn.
I was just going to ask, are some of those jobs that in manufacturing that are being lost, are those being lost to, older generations retiring and younger generations not taking spots, or, automation taking jobs, or, and whatnot, AI,
all of these things. So AI is going to have a big driving force over the next 5 years. So shift back to the 1990s. Okay. In early 1990s, we got Word, Excel, PowerPoint in a Windows environment for the first time. All right.
It's a great time.
By the middle of the decade, there was no longer typing pools anywhere in any business. There was large numbers of middle managers that lost their jobs because you didn't need as many middle managers to make reports for leadership to understand what was going on. Okay. What we're seeing right now with AI looks like it's going to be on the same magnitude that happened. Okay. And what that does for us is we've already seen only what they've said in their quarterly reports from businesses across the United States, about 150,000 jobs that have been lost as a result of AI. And that's what they've said. It's a bigger number than that. We also know that CFOs this year, from the Richmond Fed survey, that CFOs are spending more money this year on automation that replaces workers. Last year, they were spending money on automation that augmented workers. So what we're seeing right now is an acceleration. And this particular set is problematic because it's replacing skilled workers. It's replacing people who have been doing middle management type jobs in their 50s. And it's really hard to retrain and do so in a timely enough manner when you're in that age group to go into a different line of work. Mm-hmm. All right. So AI is an issue. We certainly are seeing changes in the demographics. So we're seeing that happen. And we're seeing wages go up. So understand that as wages go up, it makes alternative things worthwhile. All right. So there's a restaurant in West Michigan that uses robots to bus tables. Okay.
What restaurant is this?
I'll let that be.
We're going to have to go to this restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I'm going to be so rude to that waiter.
I'm like, there's no way that makes any sense. This is just got to be a gimmick. Okay. And then they gave the price of the robot. So I was able to calculate the price of the robot and training and all of those things, maintenance. And if you compared that to what a busboy was earning in 2018, it would have taken 3 to 5 years to pay off the robot. That doesn't make any sense for a restaurant. Okay. With what they get paid now, it's 9 months. All right. So, as wages go up, things that didn't make sense before start to make sense.
We're starting to price ourselves out of work.
Yeah. And so as a society, we're thinking, more pay, more pay, more pay. But there is a downside to that. And that downside is that we're opening ourselves from competition that isn't labor.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I know Nick's got a question coming up, but in regards to what you were just talking about there, I remember Andrew Yang in 2020 was running on the universal income and everything. Everybody would get $1,000 extra a month or whatnot. And he said his justification for that was to help mediate workers that lose their jobs, like truck drivers, if they're going to be using the electric robotic trucks cross country and stuff like that. And then the gas stations that would be affected by that, because there won't be drivers to buy their Red Bulls or anything else. The brothels, they'd take a hit.
Oh my God.
But how would universal income look like in that scenario? Because it sounds like a real possibility on the people are losing their jobs to AI and everything like that.
I think that what this is a short-term issue for jobs, not a long-term issue for jobs. So, because it didn't take us long to figure out how to use all that technology in the 90s to do things we had never thought of doing before. All right. And build things that we had never thought of building before, and having services that we never thought of before. All of those things will happen, but it will take 5 to 10 years for that to catch up with the technology as it goes through. So the beginning of it will be losses of jobs. The end of it will be increases in jobs. But with universal basic income, the key to universal basic income, if you want to push that, is that you need enough income being generated by what economists call capital, those machines and things that aren't people. Okay. And if you're generating enough income that way, then universal income is a way to then distribute that income away from capital holders, because labor is widely distributed, but capital is not. It is owned by fewer groups of people, like Elon Musk. All right. And so universal income comes into play into that world. What we know right now is that capital is not generating enough income compared to labor to make it sustainable at this moment in time.
Gotcha.
Paul, I got two more kind of themes that I want to hit upon here before you leave the program. So in watching some of the video clips where you talk about the state of the local economy here, you also offer some suggestions for how to increase the economy by margins of like 1 to 3%. A couple of those things. The first thing that you mentioned was quote, like international immigration, childcare services, and housing availability. Now, on this podcast, we've discussed immigration a little bit and what it is. We're trying to help our listeners decide fact from fiction. So I'd love if you could share a bit like how legal immigrants can help to grow the economy, as opposed to, because I think there's this argument out there like the immigrants are going to take away jobs from native or the local people. Go ahead and share that with us.
Sure. What we do know is, and all three of those pieces that you just talked about, was to alleviate the lack of labor that we have. So we do not have enough workers, and we do not have enough of the right type of workers to grow as quickly as businesses in West Michigan can grow. All right. There's not enough, and the number of young people that we have is shrinking very fast. So the number of 20 to 24-year-olds in Michigan peaked in 2014. It's been dropping ever since.
Are they moving away, or we're just not making kids?
Well, we're not making kids. Gen X left Michigan. So between 2000 and 2010, most of the country had a short recession in 2001, had lots of good times, and then entered another recession around 2008. Okay? Michigan was in a recession the entire time, basically. All right? And so our construction workers went to Georgia and Houston.
Yep.
Manufacturers went to Tennessee. We had young families move all over the place. So Generation X left, and they had their babies where they went. All right. So the problem exists for the entire United States because we aren't generating enough. The neat thing about a labor supply is that we have an 18-year lead time on how many we're going to have. All right. It takes 18 years for them to become a worker. And we can see that. And we are not generating enough babies to replace the people who are leaving. All right.
Get to work, Shawn.
Me, I've already got two. You've got one. I've already doubled you. So you better start,
We know replacement rate for children is about 2.1 babies for every woman in the United States.
I love it when they put points on stuff like that. This is how many babies we need, 2.2. It's like, how do you get a 0.2 baby?
Well, it just means that of 10 people, one of them has to have 3. But
I had my dark humor pop in my head there. 0.2 baby. How do you make that? Okay, we'll leave that alone.
This is about, we know how fast people die. Okay. We're pretty good at that. There's really good understanding as to how badly Americans drive and how badly we eat and how fast we're going to die.
Boy, that's just got depressing.
And so if you want to get really depressed, go to the Social Security. They'll actually tell you your probability of dying this year, given the age that you've made. So if you really
want to do that, I'm drinking a Red Bull right now. I have a feeling I'm on the low side of that totem pole.
So we aren't generating enough workers that way. All right. We are drawing in a lot of workers from the east side of the state. So we're doing that. And in fact, almost all of our job growth in West Michigan at this point is happening through immigration of some kind or another, because there's not enough people here to do the jobs that we need or want to do the jobs that we need, or have the skills to do it or any of those things. So we need people who can do that. One way to do that is to make it easier for people to work. And we know that there is 4% of workers out there not working because they don't have access to childcare. Okay. We know that we can bring workers in either from other parts of the United States or from other countries to help augment the labor force that we have. All right. And we can do things to make it easier for workers to actually work, whether that's hybrid working, whether that's allowing flexing. So there's a manufacturer in Wisconsin who's now gone to flex time in a factory. All right. Which is really hard to do, but they've discovered that it's actually increased their access to workers because workers want to have some flex. They have to hire more workers because certain workers don't show up on certain days and whatnot. But it's been a very successful venture for them. We have to do things to convince people that they want to work, make it easier for them to work. And to the extent we can't do that, we need to bring in workers so that we can continue to grow.
Paul, we've got about 2 more minutes left, 2 to 3 minutes. And I've got 4 questions from our Facebook listeners. So the first question comes from Melanie Eleanor. And she asked, what can we do to make it affordable to live in West Michigan? Yeah,
I mean, there's all sorts of things that we have to worry about. But we have to make sure that we don't lose our advantages in the price of healthcare and in our price of our housing. So both of those, we've had a gap where we've been less expensive than the rest of the country. And that gap has been narrowing over the last 10 years. We do that by building more houses. We do that by getting creative in how we use healthcare. We also have to think about food and things like that, because that's really where people are getting bit right now, is food and housing. And we just don't control the price of food. It's coming from all over the United States, all over the world. We just don't control it. So it's very hard to do. So then it's a matter of trying to get our wages to keep up with the wages in the rest of the country. And so we get paid a little bit less than people elsewhere in the country for the same job. Mm-hmm. So if we start narrowing that, it will help us here in West Michigan as well.
All right, this next question comes from Amy Chipman, and I think you alluded to this earlier, but what is the biggest economic opportunity available in Ottawa County?
Well, in Ottawa County, we certainly right now are way short of housing in Ottawa County. So that's a place that's very interesting. Ottawa County's housing prices are actually the highest in the state. So that's a little scary. But I think that we have to find ways to leverage the manufacturing capability of Ottawa County, because it's unique in the United States in the amount of manufacturing that it does. So we have a group of workers who understand how to do that. And if we can leverage that group as we see more onshoring happen in the United States, more of that will come here.
And this one's from Carla Bender. What can West Michigan businesses do to maintain a healthy business climate while treating employees well?
Well, there's a tautology there. You treat employees well, you tend to do much better as a business. So we know that the one thing we have to do is help workers enjoy being at work to the extent that they're going to, and that the costs of them coming to work aren't too high. So we really have to think through that daycare issue. We really have to think through that worker housing issue. We really have to think through, how do we use technology to augment what someone's doing that's too hard for them to do as an individual.
Final question here comes from Becky Patrick. How can both the business community and elected officials foster a spirit of cooperation, collegiality, and problem solving in county government?
Ooh. Oh, man. I'm not sure how much I want to wade into Ottawa County government issues. But the short answer is traditionally across West Michigan, and we see it in Muskegon County, we see it in Kent County, and we've traditionally seen it in Ottawa County, is we've seen a huge collaboration between businesses and government. And it's part of what's made West Michigan stronger than other places. When I come and talk to businesses in West Michigan, they'll tell me things that you won't hear, and they'll share in ways that you won't hear anyways. They're cooperating. They're trying to make this a better place. And so that public-private partnership is the key to our success. It's been the key to the success of Grand Rapids, and it's been the historical key to success in Ottawa County. So I don't know how that occurs under your current sets of stresses that are happening within Ottawa County. But we need to make sure that we look at the fact that it's important to do that.
Excellent. Thank you, Melanie, Amy, Carla, and Becky for the questions. All right, listener and Paul, we are out of time. I could ask so many more questions. This has been a really fascinating and helpful discussion. Paul, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That's Dr. Paul. That's Dr. Paul Isely, the Associate Dean and Professor of Economics for the Seidman College of Business at Grand Valley State University. All right. Let's see here. Listener, we'd love to hear from you. What did you think of this conversation? Was this helpful for you? Who would you like us to have on the program? Be sure to leave your comments on our Facebook page under this podcast episode. And then there's also a new way that you can send us a text message where you'll see this podcast episode. It should be right at the top of the podcast episode. Listener, be and stay informed in 2024. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter at votecommongood-wm.org, where you'll sign up to receive the weekly podcast updates and event updates. And then, always follow us on our socials with Facebook, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. Shawn, any final parting words before we shut this deal down?
Enjoy your Saturday.
That's right. Enjoy your 13th of July Saturday. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining this Common Good conversation. Till next time, be the common good in West Michigan. Peace.